Very pleased to be joined here at Blogging the Boys by the one and only, the dashing, the debonair, someone who I have known for almost a decade now, dating all the way back to his days at, correct me if I'm wrong, Ithaca College. It is from the Jake Asman Show, from ESPN New York, from Mad Dog Radio. His resume has grown substantially since he was hanging out in Houston with a bunch of classmates. Jake Asman. Jake, thanks so much for joining Blogging the Boys.
RJ, I think you're right. We had known each other a decade now, which is crazy, right? So always good to join you, and I appreciate you when you come on any radio show I'm doing. So it's hopefully going to be a good game Sunday between a winless Jets team and a Cowboys team that we all watched in primetime.
That I'm still recovering as far as like the late night of it all, and then the tie, and just going into Monday morning. It was difficult. We're chatting on Wednesday, just for full context for anyone who watches this, in case there's a weird injury thing, like Trey Benson, like being totally fine, and then like, just off the earth, like 30 minutes later. That was very strange. I want to ask you, before you said right before we started recording that you were excited for tonight's Yankees game. It's game 2 of the wild card round against Boston. Would you take a Yankees series win over a Jets win this week? Because 0-5 is kind of a killer, and so I don't know if you would just like stamp the season over for the Jets in the name of the Yankees winning.
I got to be honest. I kind of stamped the season over for the Jets when they fell to 0-3. Just statistically speaking, like right. It was incredibly unlikely at 0-3 they were going to do anything. 0-4, I think there's only been one 0-4 team ever that has recovered and made the playoffs, and it was the 92 Chargers, I believe. I mean, I don't even really care because I just know this Jets team is done. They're not going to the playoffs, but to answer your question, I would not trade a Jet win for a Yankee win, because the Yankees are in the playoffs, right? They got a legitimate chance if they could get by Boston to, go on a run. They were in the World Series last year. So, can't sacrifice a playoff win for a regular season win. But I will say this, I'm still rooting for the Jets to win because they need to win games, man. This is a franchise that claims to be headed in the right direction with a new regime in place. And the only way you could prove you're going in the right direction is by actually winning games.
Yeah, you are a New Yorker through and through, and someone who I think of when I think of the area, and obviously think of the Jets, think of professional football or sports, really, because your career has been so widespread. And you are super critical of the Jets, and I say that in a very complimentary way, and hold their feet to the fire. But you also are willing, because you have such a positive, mindset, to give them, I don't say a benefit of the doubt, but to always look for the silver lining. And so I think you just kind of did that, right? Like you're past the point of lose, tank, whatever, scam for Sam, like all these different, things in the past. Now it's okay. There's a new head coach. You got the quarterback you wanted in free agency. Like you can't just lose anymore. You at some point you have to turn a corner, and so I feel like the mindset of like same old Jets doesn't apply here. They just haven't been good enough, but they're certainly trying, as opposed to times of the past.
Yeah, I look at it like this, right? Like the Jets have tried everything during this like now 15 seasons of likely not going to the playoffs if they don't make it this year. They've been bad and have had the top pick and have taken the quarterback, and then they take the quarterback and the quarterback doesn't play well, and we say, oh, well, the quarterback's not any good. And then it's like, okay, or maybe you didn't surround said quarterback in the right environment. Now look at what Sam Darnold's doing, right? That's that example. They tried the quick fix after they missed on Zach Wilson after that, and they bring in Aaron Rodgers, and that doesn't work out. So to me, they just need to find a way to get a real head coach, and hopefully that's Aaron Glenn. So far 4 games in, it has not looked good, but I'm not going to say he can't turn things around and become a good head coach. So I just want to see some progress, some improvement. Like the Jets under Robert Saleh won 4 games in his first year, and that team had nowhere near the level of talent that this year's team does. So you look at the Jets in 3 of their 4 games, it's come down to the final couple of plays. 2 of them they lost on literally a field goal as time expired. So they have been close, but they have not been able to finish. And I think fans just want to see wins. They want to see some competency. We just want to feel like, hey, we're actually headed in the right direction, because we've tried the quick fix at quarterback. And the reality is, if you don't have the right infrastructure around whoever the quarterback is, it's not going to matter. So I'm just focused on seeing progress and wins, because you can't change a culture if you're not ultimately winning games.
Yeah, I think the feeling you're chasing, and it may be short-lived, but is the way Giants fans are feeling this week after the win last week. I mean, that type of feeling is intoxicating, just feeling like you have hope, and you're even willing, I would imagine Giants fans are willing to say, like, this season may not be a playoff year, but we're no longer headed due south, and we've turned a corner, and brighter days, or the darkest part of the night is finally in the past. On the subject of the quarterback, I don't know if you've seen this, but like 10 minutes before we started recording, which was my fault because Jake is very kind. I actually told him the time we were going to record, and then I didn't read the time zone properly. So
I screw up time zones all the time, RJ. So I've been there, man. It's tough.
But shout out to me, Brian Schottenheimer, and I'm curious to ask you about Schottenheimer as well. But he said of Justin Fields, again, just recently, he presents a number of problems just based on the skill set, the athleticism, arm strength, arm talent, ability to improvise. These are chalk cliche coach speak things, but do you feel that way about Justin Fields, or are you out? Like, I'm curious because I was really excited about him joining the Jets and felt like a chance for him to shine. Week 1 was very promising, but the last few weeks have been a little bit bumpier.
He has not been the reason why they haven't won. I've never been the biggest Fields fan or like a Fields guy. I didn't love him with the Bears. I never thought he was like, this great franchise quarterback. But to be fair, I never thought Sam Darnold or Baker Mayfield and Geno Smith were going to be able to revitalize, their career. So I looked at Fields like a lottery ticket with, a lot of talent. He's only 26. And, the one thing he does do well is he can run. Like, he's as elite with the ball in his hands as any player in the league. That touchdown run he had on Monday night, there's very few players in the league who can make that type of play. So, so far it's been some ups. There's definitely been some downs, but he's played well enough for this team to at least be 2-2 from a record standpoint. Like, he's played well enough to at least make you feel like if you had better either players around him or the defense wasn't as bad as it's been, you'd be able to win some games. So I've been encouraged. I think the Schottenheimer assessment there is fair. I think a key thing for Fields is they got to get him going earlier in the game from a passing standpoint. Week 1 they did, and that to me was kind of a bit of an outlier performance. But when he has since, had opportunities to kind of drop back and pass, he's been effective, but they haven't always opened things up until they're trailing in these games, and you have to throw a lot to get back in it. I'd like to see the Jets let him throw a little bit earlier on in these games and see if you could kind of build something there, get him into that rhythm early. I know they want to run the ball, but I think they got to use the pass sometimes to even set up their rushing offense.
Yeah, well, I would say, and I hope the best for you, but if the Jets can't succeed through the air this week, it won't ever happen. I mean, the Cowboys are proving to be the antidote for everybody in that sense. They, for the 4th time in franchise history, are riding a 3-game streak of opposing quarterbacks throwing for at least 3 touchdowns against them. Caleb Williams threw 4. And so I'm curious from your perspective, because you do such a great job of establishing the pulse of Jets fans, the Asmaniacs, which every time I hear you say reminds me of the cartoon, the Animaniacs. I don't know if you were a fan of it or
I like that. Yeah.
Intentional or not, but is that y'all's perception, that, hey, if Fields and the offense can't do it against this crappy Cowboys defense, then we might be up a creek all season long?
You know what it is? I don't even think it's like if Fields can't do it, just if the offense can't go out there and like look competent for an entire game, then there's some concerns. And what's so crazy is you look at the game on Monday, their opening drive, they go right down the field. They're running the hell out of the ball. And then Braylon Allen, who suffers an injury and he's not going to play now in this game and probably maybe doesn't play again this year, unfortunately, he has this catastrophic fumble at the goal line. And instead of taking a 7-3 lead in the entire tenor of the game is different, smash mouth football, all of a sudden you don't score. Miami then goes down the field, 15-play drive, demoralizes the Jet defense, and you're down 10-0 and you're playing catch up the rest of the night. Like the Jets have been so close in some of these games. There's been guys open and maybe the quarterback doesn't see him or someone doesn't pick up a blitz and a guy's open, but you can't deliver the ball. Like they've had moments of looking like a legitimate team this year. And I think that's why the Jet fan is so frustrated because they've been close, but they haven't closed. And against the Cowboys, it presents a matchup where offensively they should be able to score points. The problem for the Jets is they can't stop anyone on defense. We know how good Dak and that offense is. So that's the biggest concern by far for any Jet fan.
Like I said, I want to ask you about Brian Schottenheimer, but I want to ask about Aaron Glenn first, who played for the Cowboys way back in the day as well. I think the answer is easy with Schottenheimer, but where has Aaron Glenn made the Jets better so far? I know it's a hard question because they haven't won a game, but and it doesn't even have to be a measurable on the field. It could be accountability. It could be culture. It could be whatever cliche you want. But, I mean, where are you looking at this team and saying, thank God they don't have Robert Saleh anymore. Thank God Aaron Glenn is here.
I got to be honest with you, RJ. I can't point to one thing that is definitely better from what we have seen. I don't think it's fair to properly judge Glenn just yet because it's only been 4 games. And some of these mistakes, like you can't blame Aaron Glenn for Braylon Allen,
Right.
fumbling the ball there. But I'll tell you what, some of the personnel decisions that he's overseeing, because, this is a head coach driven organization, right? Like the GM essentially reports to Glenn. Some of the personnel decisions, like retaining Xavier Gibson on this team as the kickoff returner, that cost him a game week 1. He fumbled against the Steelers, and that changed everything. If that doesn't happen, they win, and we don't have to hear about Aaron Rodgers sticking it to the Jets
Right.
all week. Like, the whole game is different. So there are like a bunch of things that I could point to that will probably bore your audience because they don't care about the minutia of some of these games. But he's trying to change like the perception that this team is a bunch of losers. He's trying to try and build his guys up and say, it's going to be different. Trust me. I came from somewhere where we were terrible. We figured it out. And, the one thing I do think that Glenn does have going for him that's a major positive, he's a former Jet. He understands the media market. He joined the Jets, and his first 2 years, they had the worst record in the league, the Rich Kotite years. Then Bill Parcells shows up, 1997, and the Jets go from 1-15 to 9-7, almost make the playoffs a year later. They're in the AFC Championship game with 12-4 record. So he saw what it looks like as both a player and a coach at its absolute worst in both New York and Detroit, where he was coaching, of course, and they turned it around. So it's going to take time. I think Jet fans are trying to be patient, but at the same time, there's a lot of things he said he'd clean up, like the penalties and the self-inflicted wounds and not being ready to play at the start of games or not finishing halves properly. And these have been problems through the first 4 games. So it's been a mixed bag so far. I'm rooting for him because he's a Jet, and if he can't do it, oh my God, who can? But I can't say, hey, they're definitely doing this better than they did under Saleh. The defense has been worse. The offense has been a little better. They can run the football well, but I don't know if that's enough to say, hey, he definitely has this team on the right track so far.
So I know we've discussed this a few times. You do a lot of radio work, and you've been kind enough to have me on in different respects. So I don't know if you remember this specific detail from when Dallas moved on from Mike McCarthy. They waited through the wild card round, and because they did not have the opportunity to virtually interview either Ben Johnson or Aaron Glenn or the Chiefs coordinators for that matter. But obviously they were not, prime candidates in the cycle. And so Ben Johnson, got one over them. And both of these coaches obviously come from the same organization in the Lions. And again, I don't know, you talked about the minutia of different things and whatever. You're not, in the Cowboys, ether. So maybe some of these things escape you. When the Cowboys beat the Lions 2 years ago, it was a Saturday night game. The night Jimmy Johnson went into the Ring of Honor, there was the reporting as eligible fiasco that, was improperly called, that Dallas benefited from, whatever. And the Lions have been like the worst little brothers about that in the world. Like they have freaked out. They start, one of their beat writers, I think for the Athletic, started a podcast that called reporting as eligible or something. I mean, no disrespect, but my point is like that was pretty rent free in everybody's mind. And when the Lions visited AT&T Stadium last year, I mean, it was very clearly personal for them. It was very clearly a matter of embarrassing the Cowboys. And I think that disposition carried over through to Ben Johnson, even in his days in Chicago now. And so I'm curious, like, Aaron Glenn doesn't seem like that kind of guy. He doesn't seem like somebody who holds grudges. He does seem like somebody who's very serious about his process and his work and his operation. But I'm kind of fascinated to see if that will be the case, because I mean, it did not look great for the Cowboys that they got outclassed by Ben Johnson when they didn't even get the chance to interview him. And the same thing could be true, obviously, on Sunday against Aaron Glenn.
It's an interesting angle. I could tell you in New York, no one has thought of that one. So that's an interesting nugget that you just placed in my brain there. I think Aaron Glenn is just focused on getting this team the win, though. I don't think it matters who the opponent is. This is a Jets team that has been close in 3 of their 4 games, but close doesn't get you anything in the NFL, So like ultimately, he's just trying to get his first win as a head coach, because it's getting loud here already, which is partially unfair. But unfortunately for Aaron Glenn, he's stepping into a spot where the franchise hasn't made the playoffs in 15 years. The last time the Jets were in the playoffs, Brian Schottenheimer was the offensive coordinator for Mark Sanchez and the Jets. Like, I treasure those years. And in hindsight, I was anti-Shotty. He's terrible. And it's like, he's been our best play caller we've had in the last 15 years. So sorry, Shotty. But ultimately, like, I think that's the only focus Glenn has, just winning a damn game and trying to give this team that has been close something to believe in. Like, hey, like, you guys just beat a good football team. Like, trust me, what we're doing is going to work. It's going to turn. I think that's his biggest focus.
You kind of answered my next question already with bringing up Brian Schottenheimer. That's where I was going, because we have talked about him and his time, because it was difficult to look at his time in Seattle as the offensive play caller. As far as garnering data this entire past offseason, the Jets days were always what we looked to the most from a Cowboys perspective. And so I'm curious, if it was obviously a long time ago, and I love Mark Sanchez, but Dak Prescott's performance right now is far and away very different from what Mark did, those back-to-back AFC title game appearances.
Although I'll say this, I'll defend my guy Sanchez with this. If Mark Sanchez's career in the playoffs when he was 4-2 Look at his numbers. He has like a 94
Oh,
career passer rating. Like if you got regular season Dak with playoff Sanchez in Dak, I think the Dallas Cowboys would have a legitimate chance of going on a run.
what was the Patriots? Was a wild card win? It was like 35-3 or something. That's escaping me. Or maybe that was a regular season game that the
So the
Jets
Jets
won.
lost to the Pats 45-3 on Monday Night Football. But the Pats were like 9-1 or 10-1. The Jets were 9-2. It was a battle for first place, and the Jets lost 45-3. So then they met in the playoffs that year in the divisional round. New England was 14-2. This is like prime Brady, MVP of the league that year. And Sanchez outplayed Brady. The Jet defense was great that day too, of course. And the Jets won. It went back to the AFC Championship game for the second year in a row. And it's funny because it kind of goes full circle. Aaron Glenn said, hey, these are not the same old Jets. Look at the fight we're showing. And I took offense to that because the last time a Jet head coach said we're not the same old Jets, and it actually was true, was when Rex Ryan said after that game we just talked about, hey, same old Jets right back in the AFC Championship game. And
Mm.
Shoddy was the OC then. So it's been a long time.
That's really cool. And see, like Shoddy strikes me as somebody who does look for that symbolism. He's still searching for his first road win as an NFL head coach. Obviously, got the home win against the Giants a few weeks back. And he to me is, I've never asked the man this personally, but someone who would view this as it would be right for me to get this, at MetLife Stadium with the Jets, where my career had its highest of highs before this. And so, do you see anything in him now that you said you didn't like him obviously at that time, but I guess my question is your thoughts from someone who knew him and rooted for him or rooted against him, passionately a long time ago.
Yeah, you know what? It's by the end of his tenure, I thought they needed a different change, but we couldn't deny the results early on. I mean, the one thing that he did that I think in hindsight he should get a lot more credit for, he helped establish that identity the Jets wanted to be with Rex Ryan, like ground and pound. Like the Jets
Right.
were the best team in the NFL during those 2 years, running the football and like that smash mouth ball. And Sanchez did definitely improve. He never lived up to what we thought he was going to be after he's in the championship game his first 2 years. Like he never took that next step, but turns out that was just him, maybe not Brian Schottenheimer, and ultimately cost Schotty his job after that 2011 8-8 season. So I look back on his time and I miss those years because of how long it's been since the Jets were any good. That's honestly the truth. I do think it probably would mean a lot to him though to get that first win at MetLife because you're right, like that's where he coached at the highest of highs when he was with the Jets.
Man, you talked about me putting a nugget in your brain. Thinking about it, I don't know if you recall, but Dak, his primary backup his rookie year was Mark Sanchez, and
Right.
he was very close with him. And when they went to Pittsburgh and won that crazy game that a lot of people remember that year, his rookie year, Mark Sanchez said after that he told Dak that he said, "Look, you have no idea how hard what you're doing is. Like just take a moment and just appreciate it because Mark had been there, right? Mark had done that. And when you have success like that early on in your career, you think that this is just the way it goes. And that's simply not life in the NFL for most people. And so that energy that existed with Mark may seem to exist on some level with Shoddy. And so I'm happy for Dak that he kind of has some cousin of that with Brian Schottenheimer. I like to ask people who cover the opposing team this question, Jake. Who is somebody that could have success on Sunday that we're not talking about, that isn't chalk, that isn't obvious to us, but that would be from your vantage point?
I think a lot of fantasy football owners might be onto this night by now, but Mason Taylor's starting to become a real
Right.
player for this Jets team. I mean, he was someone they used a second round pick on out of LSU. Funny enough, the last time the Jets were in the playoffs with Shoddy as the OC, Jason Taylor was signed to a 1-year deal. So, the Miami Dolphin great was on the Jets. So when they showed Jason Taylor on the broadcast on Monday night, I was hoping he'd be wearing, Jets gear and it'd be after Mason made like a touchdown catch or something. So he's been playing well, though. He hasn't scored a touchdown yet. So maybe that could come this week. But everyone knows about Garrett Wilson, how special he is, despite some of the quarterback issues he's dealt with in his young career. But I think Mason Taylor is a name to watch, at least offensively, as a guy the Jets are going to continue to try and get more involved in their passing attack going forward.
That's a good answer. My last one isn't about predictions. I think that's lame to do on a Wednesday. But in the aftermath of the Micah Parsons trade, it was reported that Jerry Jones called the Jets and
That was
asked
on
for
our station. Gary Myers did
right.
the interview with Jerry. Yep.
And so Quinnen Williams and a first round pick was the reported ask. It obviously ultimately went to the Packers, or he went to the Packers for 2 first rounders and Kenny Clark. I know you've talked about it at length since then, but for our purposes, would you have wanted that? And maybe, do you feel differently 3 weeks later after that report than you did at the time, just based on, winning and losing changes, perspectives on things? Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think in hindsight, it would have been a big mistake if the Jets made that move. So I'm glad it didn't happen. And it's no knock on Micah. I mean, you guys
Right.
know firsthand just how good of a player he is. But you look at the Jets right now. Imagine they made that deal. What would their record be? Would they be any better than 0-4? I don't think so. I mean, Micah, as good as he was just on a defense that allowed 40 points the other night. Quinnen Williams is
Through
still
the
playing.
Cowboys of all teams, right?
Right.
To your point. Yeah.
Exactly. Quinnen Williams is still playing at an all-pro level this year. He's been really, really good. It's not his fault why the defense is struggling. He's one of the few bright spots on that D so far. And then, if they made that deal and didn't have their first round pick on top of it, let's be real, the Jets are picking in the top 5 this year, which right now they're picking at number 2. If they can't find a way to win some games, they're going to need that pick for a quarterback, right? And now all of a sudden you don't have a first round pick, but you don't have Quinnen, so you have no one to stop the run anymore. And you just have Micah Parsons, and yeah, he's a great player. He's obviously going to help you, but I just think it would have done way more long-term damage than make the Jets good enough to truly take a step this year in a year that's not considered an all-in year.
That makes sense. There is a lot of full circle nature to this. I mean, the Aaron Glenn factor, the Brian Schottenheimer factor, you brought up the Jason Taylor, Mason Taylor thing. It's weird how that's happening. That ultimately leads me to believe that Quinnen Williams will have an insane game. And it will be a matter of oh, of course, this was, and Jerry will get his moment of yeah, that's why I called him. And that's the dude I wanted. Jake, plug away the Jake Asman show. I know you do a lot of live shows and things like that. So anything and everything you can push out, we're happy to amplify.
Well, RJ, I'll give you one more kind of storyline from this game that's kind of full circle. So when the Jets played the Cowboys at MetLife in 2019, Adam Gase was 0-4, and Aaron Glenn is 0-4. And that first win for Gase was against the Cowboys. Sam Darnold came back from mono that game and threw this long touchdown to Robbie Anderson. I'm sure your listeners and you remember that one, right? So now Aaron Glenn's in a spot where he's 0-4, first game in week 5. Here it is, Dallas Cowboys, MetLife, same spot. Could the Jets actually win again as an underdog like they were in 2019?
If I may interject to add to your, cope casting, although I think it's fair. I don't know that I should call it coping. At the time, the Jets featured a defensive player who the Cowboys had been rumored to be trading for in the past, and Jamal Adams. And Jamal Adams had a big game, and then afterwards had the "How about them Cowboys" line that is overdone. But history is written by the winners. So Quinnen Williams is to Jamal Adams as Aaron Glenn is to Adam Gase. Is my point.
Wow, so you're telling me that we have to find some prop bets for Quinnen Williams sacks and quarterback hits, tackles for a loss, whatever we could find.
And the mono thing was a unique factor that isn't related to this, but I remember that vividly because the Cowboys were 3-0 at that time, or 3-1, and they were 3-0, and then they ultimately fell to 3-3, and that Jets loss was kind of the lowest point in that run. People were beginning to question it, and that wound up being the final year of Jason Garrett as opposed to this being the first year of Brian Schottenheimer.
There you go, full circle, right? So we'll see. If people are interested in the Jets angle of things, you'll find me on YouTube every day, and I do a Sunday football preview show that RJ was nice enough to guest star with us on when the Giants were in town to play the Cowboys a few weeks ago. So you can listen to that from 8 to noon Eastern. It's me and former Jets and Dolphins GM Mike Tannenbaum every Sunday.
Jake, you're the man. As we walk off, something to watch on Netflix or Hulu or whatever, a streaming thing that you recommend. It's fall and it gets dark early, and when there's not football on, you kind of want something to cozy up to.
It's tough because I've been just watching baseball every night right now, and I might need to find something if the Yankees get eliminated later today. So we'll see. What's a good show? You know what? I'm trying to think what Hulu, Netflix. I would say the Cowboys doc. I was in the middle of watching that, but your audience has seen that already. So what is left? You know what? I'll be honest. I've been doing a rewatch of Entourage right now on HBO. So I'll say go back to the classics because I couldn't even tell you what the best current show is.
Let me be the 432nd person to tell you that you look and sound a lot like E, obviously, from Entourage.
I'll take that. I would love his bank account.
Yeah, well, not early on. Those final seasons are, when he told Sloan what up. That's when everything kind of turned for him.
That's what it's all about.
Appreciate it, Jake.
You got it, RJ. Thank you.
That was awesome.